Imagine walking through a beach resort, the sun warming your skin, children laughing nearby. Now imagine this. Beneath the parking lot lies a mass grave. Over 200 Palestinians murdered in 1948, still buried there. This is not fiction. This is the Tantura massacre, one of many. This is the Nakba, a story they tried to bury. Stay with us till the end as we uncover the truth they tried to hide for decades. For hundreds of years, before borders were carved and villages were cleared, Palestine was vibrant and alive. By the early 1900s, cities like Jaffa, Haifa, and Jerusalem were thriving hubs of culture, commerce, and spirituality. Jerusalem, sacred to three religions, echoed with church bells, the call to prayer, and lively, scholarly debates. In villages, the rhythm of life followed the harvest. Olives, citrus, and wheat. Neighbors, Muslim, Christian, and Jewish Palestinians, lived side by side, sharing traditions and language. Educators like Khalil al-Sakakini inspired minds. Poets like Ibrahim Tukan stirred national pride. Political figures such as Hajj Amin al-Husseini and Musa Alami led rising movements for self-determination. This land wasn't empty. It was inhabited, rooted, and full of dreams, long before promises were made elsewhere. Across Europe, a different movement was taking shape: Zionism. Its founder, Theodor Herzl, envisioned a Jewish homeland in Palestine, the Promised Land. The First Zionist Congress in 1897 solidified this goal, attracting followers who saw Palestine as a solution to centuries of persecution in Europe. For European Jews fleeing pogroms and persecution, it offered salvation. But this dream came with a fatal blind spot. Palestine was not empty. It was already home to millions. The year 1917 marked a turning point. As the Ottoman Empire ruling Palestine crumbled during World War I, Britain issued the Balfour Declaration, a short, ambiguous statement that promised support for the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. This declaration, made without the consent of the Palestinian population, set the stage for decades of conflict. When Britain took control after the war, it became the colonial gatekeeper of Palestine. Between 1920 and 1947, Jewish immigration soared, especially following the horrors of the Holocaust. As the Zionist movement gained strength, so did its military arms. The Haganah was formed in 1920, a militia that would eventually become the backbone of the Israeli army. But more radical offshoots like the Irgun, led by Menachem Begin, and the Lehi, led in part by Yitzhak Shamir, took matters into their own hands. They didn't just prepare for conflict, they waged it. By 1947, Jews made up 1/3 of the population. Radical militias launched attacks on British targets, including the bombing of the King David Hotel in Jerusalem in 1946, further escalating the violence and instability. Behind the image of victimhood, a well-armed, well-organized movement was rising. November 29, 1947, the UN votes on Resolution 181, a plan to dividing Palestine into Arab and Jewish states, with Jerusalem as an international city. Jews, then 33% of the population, were granted 56% of the land. The Jewish leadership agreed. The Palestinians rejected it. How do you give away someone else's home? They saw it as an unjust division of their homeland. As debate raged, Zionist militias prepared. The stage was set for catastrophe. The massacres that followed were brutal and swift. Spring 1948. The Zionist forces launched Plan Dalet. Not defense, but conquest. This wasn't chaos, it was calculation. A deliberate military campaign, meticulously planned to capture territory and drive out the Palestinian population. Village after village fell. Militias surrounded towns, opened one escape road, and forced people to flee. But many were not given the chance. In Deir Yassin, a village near Jerusalem, over 100 men, women and children were murdered by the Irgun and Lehi militias. Survivors recounted horrific acts. In Tantura, a coastal fisherman village, hundreds of villagers were killed and buried in a mass grave. The air filled with the smell of death. Lida and Ramla, over 50,000 expelled in what survivors call the Death March. Over 530 villages were emptied, homes torched, wells poisoned, cemeteries bulldozed. Years later, former Haganah fighters appeared on television, proudly recounting their actions. One chillingly admitted, "I didn't take prisoners." It wasn't regret, it was pride. On May 14, 1948, as the British withdrew, the State of Israel was declared. The surrounding Arab states, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq, intervened. Fragmented and ill-prepared, they launched an attack, but it was too late. The myth of David and Goliath, of a small, defenseless Israel fighting off overwhelming Arab forces, is a powerful one, but it obscures the reality of the situation on the ground. The Zionist forces of 90,000 troops were better organized, better armed, partly with weapons handed over by the departing British, and had a clear strategic objective. The Arab armies, divided and ill-prepared, failed. The result: thousands killed. Entire towns erased from the map. By the end of the 1948 war, over 750,000 Palestinians had become refugees, unable to return to their homes. Entire families fled on foot, by cart, or clinging to whatever means of escape they could find. Often under fire, often leaving behind everything they had. More than 530 villages were wiped off the map. Homes were reduced to rubble. Wells were poisoned or sealed. Cemeteries desecrated. Arabic place names erased and replaced. Fields once passed down for generations were seized or abandoned to ruin. The consequences rippled across borders. From Jordan to Lebanon, Syria to Iraq, Egypt and beyond, Palestinians became permanent exiles. They built lives in refugee camps, many denied basic rights, unable to return home. Their displacement became generational. Some found refuge as far as Latin America or the Gulf. Entire families uprooted, their children growing up with only stories of what was lost. Palestine was not just reshaped, it was shattered. A homeland scattered across continents, its people made strangers to their own soil. Decades have passed, but the memory of the Nakba, the catastrophe, still burns in the soul of every Palestinian. Even now, attempts to silence it continue. In 2011, Israel passed the Nakba law, threatening to defund institutions that speak of the Nakba. Villages were paved over. Arabic names erased. Maps were rewritten. Holy places transformed. Survivor stories ignored. But memory refused to be buried. Olive trees still rise where homes once stood, silent witnesses to what was lost. Today, the borders drawn in 1947 have all but vanished, erased not by time, but by bulldozers, settlements, and military expansion. The vision of two states lies in ruins, blocked by checkpoints, walls, and endless occupation. This is not history. This is now. The Nakba never ended. Follow us on YouTube at Voices.from the Past to keep the story alive. Subscribe, like, and share if you believe the truth must be heard.